August 1942. The South Pacific burns under a merciless sun. Captain Hiroshi Sakamoto stands on the deck of a transport ship, watching Guadalcanal emerge from the morning mist like a sleeping beast. Around him, 300 men prepare their weapons in silence. They are veterans of China, hardened by years of conquest, carriers of an unshakable doctrine. The Japanese warrior spirit is invincible. Sakamoto is 32 years old, a graduate of the Imperial Military Academy, decorated in Manchuria, admired by his subordinates for his discipline and unshakable loyalty to the emperor. In his mind, there is no room for doubt. The Americans who invaded the island are soft, inexperienced, terrified of night combat. Henderson Field will be retaken in 48 hours, perhaps less. He opens his leather diary, a gift from his wife before departure, and writes with firm strokes, "We will sweep them into the sea before dawn." Around him, soldiers check bayonets, adjust helmets, murmur prayers to ancestors. No one questions the mission. No one doubts victory. The landing is smooth, too smooth. The jungle receives them with oppressive heat and deceptive silence. Sakamoto organizes his men in columns, assigns sectors, repeats the tactical lessons learned in Chinese campaigns: speed, aggression, contempt for death. The bushido code is not mere philosophy, it is their tactical advantage. While the enemy fears dying, the Japanese transform death into a weapon. During the first night, he gathers his officers around a map illuminated by a covered lantern. The plan is simple: frontal assault, night infiltration, surprise. American intelligence is primitive, their defense is chaotic. Sakamoto recalls training in Tokyo, instructors repeating that Western soldiers collapse under psychological pressure. One decisive attack, one night of terror, and the island will be theirs again. A young lieutenant asks about artillery support. Sakamoto smiles. "We don't need more than our courage and our steel." The others nod. It's the answer they expected, the answer the doctrine demands. But something disturbs the captain, though he doesn't admit it even to himself. During afternoon reconnaissance, he found American positions better fortified than reports indicated: barbed wire, concrete bunkers, communications trenches, and something else: abundant supplies, crates of ammunition, food, medical equipment, mountains of resources his own men lack. He dismisses the thought. Material abundance means nothing against warrior spirit. History has proven this. At Port Arthur, at Nomonhan in China, the Japanese soldier always prevailed through discipline and sacrifice. The Americans have supplies, yes, but they lack soul. That night, Sakamoto writes again in his diary, this time by candlelight inside his tent. "Tomorrow we attack. My men are ready. The Emperor watches us from the heavens. We will not fail." He closes the notebook and lies down on the damp ground, his hand resting on his katana. Outside, the jungle whispers. Strange birds scream in the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, barely audible, the sound of American engines, generators perhaps, or trucks carrying more supplies. Sakamoto closes his eyes. Tomorrow, all doubts will be erased. Tomorrow, honor will be restored. Tomorrow, the doctrine will prove itself once again, as it always has. But the jungle keeps whispering. And in the American trenches, spotlights sweep the perimeter while machine guns wait, loaded and positioned, for the assault everyone knows is coming. The dawn reveals a green hell. Sakamoto leads his first patrol deeper into Guadalcanal's interior, following trails that twist through vegetation so dense it swallows sunlight. His men move in silence, weapons ready, eyes scanning shadows. They are hunters tracking prey they believe already defeated. Sergeant Tanaka, a scarred veteran who fought beside Sakamoto in Nanking, walks point. He signals suddenly, fresh footprints, American boots, heading toward the river. Sakamoto nods. They follow, confident, expecting to find a scattered supply unit or frightened sentries. Instead, they find emptiness. The tracks lead to a clearing, then vanish. Tanaka crouches, confused. The ground shows signs of careful erasure, branches repositioned, leaves scattered deliberately. This is not the work of panicked soldiers. The explosion comes without warning. A hidden mine detonates beneath Corporal Yoshida, tearing him apart in a spray of red mist. Before anyone can react, machine gun fire erupts from 3 directions simultaneously. Coordinated, planned, deadly. Sakamoto throws himself behind a fallen log as bullets shred the air above him. He watches helplessly as his men fall, not in glorious combat, but caught in a calculated trap. The Americans don't charge. They don't expose themselves. They simply fire from concealed positions, methodical and efficient, like farmers harvesting rice. 20 minutes later, silence returns. 8 men dead, 4 wounded. The Americans have withdrawn, leaving only empty shell casings and the stench of blood. Sakamoto stares at the bodies, particularly at Lieutenant Hayashi, his finest platoon leader, now lying face down in mud, his spine visible through the torn uniform. This was not supposed to happen. Chinese soldiers fought predictably, brave but disorganized. These Americans fought like ghosts, striking from nowhere, disappearing before counterattack. No honor-driven charges, no exposed flanks, just cold, systematic violence. Back at base camp, Sakamoto reports to Colonel Ichiki. The colonel dismisses his concerns with a wave. American tricks, cowardice disguised as tactics. Tomorrow we attack Henderson Field directly. Their deceptions mean nothing against 1,000 warriors charging as one. But that night, Sakamoto cannot sleep. He walks the perimeter, observing his soldiers. They clean weapons, write letters home, pray quietly. They still believe. They still trust the doctrine. Only he carries this new weight, the knowledge that something fundamental has shifted. He finds Private Kimura vomiting behind a tree, traumatized by the ambush. The boy is 17, recruited 6 months ago, convinced by posters showing samurai defeating Western devils. Now he trembles, unable to eat, whispering about the mechanical precision of enemy fire. Sakamoto wants to comfort him, wants to repeat the lessons from academy. That spirit conquers material, that courage defeats machinery, that the Emperor's divine will guides every blade. But the words catch in his throat. He saw Hayashi die. He saw the trap. He saw the difference between doctrine and reality. Instead, he places a hand on Kimura's shoulder and says nothing. Sometimes, silence is the only honest response. Above them, stars pierce the tropical sky, indifferent and eternal. Somewhere across the jungle, American sentries rotate shifts, eating hot food, receiving radio communications, supported by supply lines that stretch across an ocean. They sleep in foxholes reinforced with sandbags, drink purified water, treat wounds with abundant medicine. Sakamoto's men sleep on bare ground, rationing rice, drinking from contaminated streams. The captain returns to his tent and opens his diary. His hand hovers over the page for long minutes before he writes a single question. What if courage is not enough? He closes the notebook quickly, ashamed of the thought. Tomorrow, the real battle begins. The night of August 21st arrives with suffocating humidity. Colonel Ichiki's plan is simple, elegant in its brutality. 900 men will cross the Tenaru River under cover of darkness, overrun the American positions, and reclaim Henderson Field before sunrise. Sakamoto's company forms the second wave, positioned to exploit the breakthrough Ichiki promises will come within the first hour. They move through the jungle in complete silence, a serpent of steel and flesh winding toward the river. Sakamoto feels his heart pounding, not from fear but from anticipation mixed with something darker, something that has grown since the ambush. Doubt, the forbidden emotion. At midnight, the first wave reaches the sandbar. Ichiki gives the signal. 800 warriors surge forward, screaming battle cries that tear through the darkness. Sakamoto watches from the tree line, waiting for his turn, expecting to hear the chaos of Americans fleeing in panic. Instead, he hears thunder. The night explodes into daylight. Flares hang in the sky like artificial suns, turning darkness into a killing field. Machine guns open fire, not scattered shots, but walls of interlocking lead that sweep the sandbar like invisible scythes. Sakamoto sees the first ranks simply disappear, bodies torn apart before they can even raise their rifles. Artillery shells begin falling with mathematical precision. The ground erupts in geysers of sand and flesh. Men scream, not battle cries now, but agony. The sound is different from anything Sakamoto heard in China. This is industrial slaughter, mechanical and absolute. He watches Major Kuroki lead a flanking charge. 30 men follow him into the river. An American tank emerges from concealed positions, its machine gun traversing slowly, methodically. Kuroki and his entire unit are cut down in seconds. The tank doesn't even stop moving. The assault continues for 2 more hours. Wave after wave of Japanese soldiers charge into the same wall of fire. Ichiki himself leads the final push, sword raised high, shouting about honor and the emperor. He makes it 15 meters before disappearing in an artillery blast. By dawn, the Tenaru River runs red. 700 bodies litter the sandbar and jungle edge. Sakamoto, who never received the order to advance, stands frozen among his surviving men, staring at the carnage. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Sergeant Tanaka approaches, his face gray. "Captain, what happened? How did they—" His voice breaks. "We fought with everything, with our souls. How did they—" Sakamoto cannot answer. The doctrine has no explanation for this. Spirit was supposed to overcome material. Courage was supposed to defeat machinery. But courage cannot stop bullets. Spirit cannot destroy tanks. Will cannot counter artillery that falls with surveyed precision. A young sergeant, tears streaming down his face, grabs Sakamoto's arm. "Sir, my brother died out there. Tell me it meant something. Tell me his death had honor." Sakamoto opens his mouth. The correct answer is automatic, drilled into him since academy. All death in service of the emperor is honorable. All sacrifice has meaning. But he looks at the river, at hundreds of his countrymen torn to pieces, and for the first time in his military career, Captain Hiroshi Sakamoto says nothing at all. The silence is his first act of honesty, and it terrifies him more than the American guns ever could. The survivors retreat into Guadalcanal's interior like wounded animals seeking darkness. Sakamoto leads 63 men, all that remains of his original company. They move without speaking, eyes hollow, uniforms stained with blood that isn't always their own. The jungle swallows them, offering concealment, but no comfort. They establish a makeshift camp 5 kilometers inland, near a contaminated stream. No fires, no noise. The men collapse against trees, too exhausted even to remove their equipment. Some weep quietly. Others stare at nothing, replaying the massacre in their minds on endless loop. Sakamoto sits apart, trying to write a report for headquarters. His hand shakes. How does one explain the unexplainable? How does one tell Tokyo that everything they taught was wrong? He begins 3 times, crosses out each attempt, finally abandons the effort entirely. Private Kimura approaches with a canteen. "Captain, you should drink." The boy's voice is different now, aged decades in a single night. Sakamoto takes the canteen, tastes the brackish water, forces it down. "Sir," Kimura whispers, "why didn't our artillery support us? Why didn't our tanks?" He stops, realizing the answer. There are no Japanese tanks on Guadalcanal, no artillery batteries, no supply lines bringing reinforcements. That afternoon, Sergeant Tanaka discovers something while scavenging the battlefield's edge, an American supply dump, hastily abandoned during the assault. They find crates of ammunition, each marked with manufacturing dates from 3 weeks ago, medical supplies in sterile packaging, rations, not rice balls wrapped in leaves, but sealed cans with meat, vegetables, chocolate, boxes of batteries, radio parts, cigarettes, water purification tablets. Sakamoto examines a discarded American field manual. Even through his limited English, he understands the organizational charts, the logistics protocols, the supply chain documentation. Each American soldier is supported by an infrastructure his own army cannot match. For every man fighting, 10 more provide support. Ships bring supplies weekly, aircraft drop equipment daily. The Japanese doctrine never prepared him for this reality. At the academy, instructors taught that material abundance makes soldiers soft, that hardship forges superior warriors. But what Sakamoto sees now is different. American soldiers aren't soft because they have supplies. They're effective because they have supplies. They fight better because they eat. They shoot straighter because they have ammunition. They survive wounds because they have medicine. He shares his observations with Tanaka that evening. The sergeant listens, then speaks carefully. "Captain, are you saying we cannot win?" Sakamoto considers the question. Victory requires more than courage. It requires food, bullets, medicine, replacements. It requires everything they lack. "I'm saying," he answers slowly, "that we were not told the truth about what victory demands." The distinction feels important, though he cannot articulate why. That night, he attempts another diary entry. His wife's face appears in his mind, her smile when he left, her pride in his uniform, her absolute faith in his invincibility. He imagines her receiving the letter he wrote before landing, full of confident predictions and patriotic certainty. How naive those words seem now. He writes a new entry, then crosses it out. Writes again, crosses out. Finally, he composes a single sentence that captures everything. Perhaps courage without food is merely empty pride. He stares at the words for a long time before closing the diary. Around him, his men sleep fitfully, dreaming of home and rice and explanations that make sense of the senseless. September arrives with rain that never stops. The jungle transforms into a fetid swamp, where every step sinks into mud, where uniforms rot against skin, where wounds fester within hours. Sakamoto's command has shrunk to 42 men. The others didn't die in combat. They simply weakened, sickened, and stopped breathing. Malaria strikes first, then dysentery, then diseases Sakamoto cannot even name. His men shit blood, vomit bile, shake with fevers that turn their eyes yellow. The medical supplies ran out weeks ago. Now they treat infections with boiled water and prayer. Private Kimura dies on a Tuesday, or perhaps Wednesday. Sakamoto has lost track of days. The boy's last words are not about the emperor or honor. He whimpers for his mother, begs for rice, asks why his stomach hurts so much. Sakamoto holds him as he dies, feeling the boy's ribs through skin stretched thin as paper. They cannot bury him properly. The ground is too wet, and they lack strength to dig. They cover the body with palm fronds and move on. Lieutenant Nakamura, Sakamoto's last remaining officer, collapses during a morning patrol. Dysentery. He soils himself repeatedly, too weak to feel shame. Sakamoto carries him back to camp, lays him on a bed of leaves, offers water they both know is contaminated. "Captain," Nakamura whispers, his lips cracked and bleeding, "tell me we're winning. Tell me this suffering has purpose." Sakamoto opens his mouth. "The lies are right there, practiced and ready. The Emperor values your sacrifice. Your suffering brings victory closer. Death in service is the highest honor." But when he looks at Nakamura, this man who trusted him, who followed every order without question, who believed every promise, he cannot speak the words. Nakamura dies that night, calling for rice with his final breath. Not for glory, not for empire, just rice. Sakamoto buries his face in his hands and weeps for the first time since childhood. The next morning, he discovers his own body betraying him. His hands tremble constantly. His vision blurs. He's lost 20 kilograms, his uniform hanging loose on a frame that once carried muscle. When he urinates, the stream is dark and painful. He finds a quiet spot away from the men and writes a letter he knows will never be delivered. His wife's name at the top, Yuki. Beautiful, faithful Yuki, who believed everything he told her about honor and duty. "They lied to us," he writes. "They sent us here with promises of glory, but no food, no medicine, no hope. They told us courage would be enough. But courage cannot stop dysentery. Spirit cannot cure malaria. Loyalty cannot fill empty stomachs." His hand shakes so badly the characters become illegible. He continues anyway. "The Americans eat 3 meals daily. They receive mail from home. Their wounded evacuate to hospitals. Ours die in mud, abandoned, wondering why their sacrifice means nothing." He signs it, folds it, places it in his diary alongside the earlier entries. The transformation is visible, from confident predictions to desperate questions to this accusation. That afternoon, Sergeant Tanaka approaches with news. Radio intercept indicates another offensive is being planned. More units will land. More men will charge American positions. More believers in the doctrine will discover its emptiness. Sakamoto stares at the jungle canopy, rain dripping through leaves onto his face. How many more must die, he asks no one in particular, before someone admits the truth? The jungle offers no answer, only rain. October 24th. The order comes through fragmented radio transmission. All units advance on Henderson Field. Final offensive, victory or death. Sakamoto reads the message 3 times, searching for nuance that isn't there. His command now numbers 31 men, skeletal figures who can barely lift their rifles. The plan, relayed from General Maruyama himself, demands a coordinated night assault across multiple axes. Thousands of Japanese soldiers will strike simultaneously, overwhelming American defenses through sheer determination. The same strategy that failed at Tenaru. The same doctrine that produced only corpses. Sakamoto's unit is assigned to attack what maps call Edson's Ridge, a position the Americans have fortified for months. He studies the terrain through binoculars, barbed wire, interlocking fields of fire, artillery positions pre-sighted on every approach, sandbag bunkers reinforced with logs, and behind it all, those endless supplies, ammunition stacked in pyramids, water in sealed containers, food that doesn't rot. Sergeant Tanaka stands beside him, both men understanding what they're seeing. "Captain," Tanaka says quietly, "this is suicide." "Yes," Sakamoto answers. The honesty surprises them both. That night, he gathers his 31 men. They sit in a circle, more ghosts than soldiers, waiting for his speech. He should invoke the Emperor, should speak of ancestors watching from heaven, should promise that death in service is the ultimate honor. Instead, he tells them the truth. "We are ordered to attack a position we cannot take with strength we do not have. Many of us will die. Perhaps all of us. I cannot promise your deaths will achieve anything." The silence is absolute. Private Ito, barely 19, asks, "Then why attack at all?" "Because refusing means court-martial and execution. At least this way, we die fighting." Sakamoto pauses. "I will lead from the front. Anyone who wishes to fall behind in the darkness, I will not report it." No one moves. Not from courage, Sakamoto realizes, but from exhaustion. They're too tired even to desert. The assault begins at midnight. Sakamoto's unit moves through the jungle, following tracers that arc across the sky like festival fireworks. The artillery barrage is supposed to weaken American defenses. Instead, it illuminates Japanese positions perfectly. The American counter-battery fire is immediate and devastating. Shells fall with precision that suggests mathematics, not war. Trees explode. Earth erupts. Men disappear in clouds of red mist. Sakamoto's unit loses 6 soldiers before they even reach the attack line. He pushes forward with the survivors, emerging from the jungle into an open killing ground. Flares turn night into day. Machine guns traverse in coordinated arcs. The Americans don't panic, don't flee, don't break formation. They simply fire, reload, fire again, methodical as factory workers. Sakamoto sees Captain Yamada's elite unit charging the ridge, the best soldiers remaining, men who survived China and Malaya. They reach the barbed wire and die there, tangled and screaming, torn apart by interlocking fire that leaves no gaps, no weaknesses, no hope. His own advance stalls after 50 meters. 10 men remain. The ridge is still 300 meters away, an impossible distance across open ground, swept by machine guns positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Corporal Sato, his face blackened by explosion residue, screams above the noise. "Captain, should we charge?" Sakamoto looks at the ridge, at the methodical American fire, at his 10 remaining men. He calculates distances, angles, probabilities. Every calculation produces the same result: 0. For the first time in his military career, Captain Hiroshi Sakamoto refuses a direct order. "Retreat," he commands. February 1943. The evacuation order arrives not as triumph, but as whispered confession. Guadalcanal is lost. 3 nights of darkness will cover the withdrawal. Ships will extract whoever remains. No announcement. No explanation, just silent retreat disguised as tactical repositioning. Sakamoto stands among the final survivors at the extraction point. 200 men from an army that once numbered 30,000. They are spectral figures, ribs visible through torn uniforms, faces hollow with starvation and disease. Many lean on improvised crutches. Some are carried by comrades barely stronger than themselves. He has no rank insignia left. They rotted away months ago. No command structure remains. The officers are mostly dead. Those who survived no longer give orders because no one has strength to follow them. They are simply men waiting for boats, hoping the Americans don't discover this final humiliation. Major Ishida, skeletal and trembling with malaria, sits beside Sakamoto on the beach. They don't speak. What words remain for men who watched an army die, not from enemy action but from systemic collapse? The destroyers arrive after midnight, dark shapes against darker water. The evacuation is chaos. Men stumbling through surf, some drowning in waist-deep water because they lack strength to walk. Sakamoto helps pull bodies aboard, unable to tell which are living and which are dead until they move or don't. He is among the last to board. As the destroyer pulls away, he stands at the rail, watching Guadalcanal recede into tropical darkness. 6 months of his life, 300 men under his command. All lost on that island where doctrine met reality and shattered. A young sailor offers him water and hardtack, real food, clean water. Sakamoto takes it with shaking hands, forces himself to eat slowly, though every instinct screams to devour. Around him, evacuated soldiers weep, sleep, or stare at nothing. He finds a quiet corner and opens his diary, somehow preserved through months of hell. The early entries mock him with their certainty. We will sweep them into the sea before dawn. He reads through the transformation, confidence to doubt, doubt to despair, despair to something harder and colder. On the final blank page, he writes his last Guadalcanal entry. The enemy was strong, yes, but it was the truth that killed us. Truth that courage without logistics is theater. Truth that spirit cannot stop artillery. Truth that the doctrine was beautiful philosophy built on foundations of lies. Truth that soldiers need food more than slogans, medicine more than honor, ammunition more than faith. He closes the diary and watches dawn break over the Pacific. Somewhere behind them, Americans raise their flag over Henderson Field permanently. Somewhere ahead, Japan continues sending men to die for beliefs that cannot feed them. The destroyer's engines throb steadily, carrying survivors toward an empire that doesn't yet know it's lost. 1951. Tokyo. Captain Sakamoto, retired now, his body permanently marked by Guadalcanal's diseases, stands before a classroom of military cadets. They are young, eager, their eyes bright with the same certainty he once carried. War, he tells them, ignoring the approved curriculum, is not won by courage alone. Study logistics, respect your enemy. Understand that sending men to die without support is not honor, it is murder. The cadets shift uncomfortably. This is not what their textbooks teach. Sakamoto continues anyway, his voice carrying the weight of ghosts. I learned this truth on an island in the Pacific. Many good men died teaching me. Do not let their deaths be meaningless. Do not repeat our mistakes. He dismisses the class and returns to his small office. On the desk sits his Guadalcanal diary, its pages yellowed and stained. Outside, cherry blossoms fall like snow. Inside, an old soldier carries his dead,